Hello and welcome to this version of our flipped classroom. I am going to take you through some slides, and the goal here is to really share some ideas outside of our normal meetings, and then you can marinate and then come into the meetings and we can discuss. So my goal is going to be to just put out some content as quickly as possible. And the topic is communication for alignment. We're going to talk about what is it? Why does it matter? What are the 4 principles of communication for alignment? I'd like to encourage you to look for ways to practice them while we're on break. And then when we come back together, let's discuss. So feel free to share what worked, what didn't work, what you liked or didn't, or any thoughts like that. I am not going to be able to cover everything I want. So I'm just going to go as fast as I can. And my goal is to shoot for like 15 minutes, give or take. All right. So basically, communication for alignment is going to take this huge topic of communication, and we're just going to really boil it down. And there is the risk of oversimplification. I know that communication is more than this, but there's a specific lens we're looking at, and it's the lens of progression theory. And so what we mean is our communication is going to be aimed at making progress. And progress toward what? For us in progression theory, it's always toward thriving. We always want to make progress toward thriving, not perfection. Now, alignment is the necessary ingredient that leads to thriving. Essentially, we attain thriving by identifying the factors that are necessary for thriving and then getting them into the right state of alignment with each other. And as we do that, we will see thriving occur so long as these factors that we're aligning are the right factors. And communication for alignment is the idea that how do we use our communication, the greatest of all alignment tools, in my view, how do we use it to create alignment? And actually, that alignment is the right measure for how communication is effective or not. I know sometimes it'd be like, did it feel good, or did it avoid conflict, or some of these other measures? But truly, it's about did our communication lead to greater alignment? And that's how we know it was effective, versus did it leave us where we're at, or even move us further apart, more contrast or drama. All right. So the 4 factors we're going to discuss, or the 4 principles would be a better way to say it, is we're going to talk about advocating reality, managing neurology, assessing alignability, and then taking positive action. That's really the 4 principles of it. Basically, something very important is that we're viewing communication as an activity, which means in progression theory means anybody can get better at it. We can apply our themes of talent, we can increase our knowledge, and we can identify ways to improve our steps. So this is a different version of something you've seen already. We want to get better. We want to move up this ladder in regards to communication. We can always get better at it. And so how do we use our themes productively toward that activity? How can we grow our knowledge in relation to communication? And then what are the steps or skills associated with communication, and how can we get better at them? And this is meant to maybe help address all of those to some degree. I mean, we won't get into your talents so much, but these are the themes that you would use to communicate better. We would all bring our themes uniquely to the activity of communication. So I also thought it'd be interesting to look at what are the links or common bonds between literacy and communication. And there's just too many to list here. So I'm going to let you freeze the screen. That's one of the benefits of a flipped classroom, is you can pause and you can look at each one of these and evaluate, add to the list. But really, there's so much connection between the two. These are just examples or questions about what happens when communication just isn't working out right. These are different situations we can get into where it shows that there isn't necessarily alignment, but it shows that we could use our communication to help move closer or more in alignment. Now, I'm going to jump right away to just what is the basic communication model? So this is often referred to the SMCR model because what we have is a source or sender, that's the S. Then we have the message, which is the M, and we have the channel, which is the C. I think there's actually several C's involved with the message and channel. It could be the context in which the communication is happening, the content of the communication itself, and the channel of communication. So I've seen it written SMCCR. Okay, and then the R being the receiver or recipient. What's important to keep in mind is that truly the source is also the receiver, and the receiver is also the source. I mean, it's happening simultaneously. And what's happening is the sender in the moment has a message that they're trying to get across. And the way I describe it is that there's something in their nervous system. That to me is the origin of communication, that there's something in the nervous system that the person wants to get out. So what they have to do is they have to encode their message. Now, what is the thing they want to communicate and how do they encode it is going to be subject to a lot of variability based on the person's personality traits, their TFBs. It's going to depend on their goals. What are they trying to do? And what's the situation? And what's their immediate situational goal? What's their overall life goals? What are their values? These invisible structures that shape our TFBs. And what are their key experiences? All of these things that have so much variability to it. There's so much variability to personality, so much variability to goals, so much variability to values and experiences. So you can't judge a book by its cover. You can't know these things about a person, and yet we're going to communicate with them. That person's going to encode their message, and they're going to send it along a channel. And that could be verbal, it could be email, it could be facial expression. You know, it could happen along various channels. So that message will be conveyed, and as it reaches the recipient, that person has to decode the message. And they'll decode the message based on, first of all, to the degree they even perceived the message. They may not have perceived it. They may not have heard it correctly. They may not have understood the words necessarily. But from whatever they take from the message, whatever text and context they take, they're going to decipher it based on their themes and their values and goals and experiences. So how do we know message sent equals message received? That's called fidelity. And that's what we're striving for in communication, but there's so many distortions that happen in the way. So this is the SMCR model. It's very good for explaining a lot of the complexities, and I didn't even talk about the feedback, but this is going on a little long here, so you get the idea. But for me, while all this is happening, our alignment meter is tracking, you know, all of this. Is our communication, is it contrasting with what I want and where I hoped it would go? Is it aligning with what I want? And as we talk through this content, I want you to think about situations where maybe you're experiencing contrast, and you know, it could be anything. It'd be this person I don't like, this rivalry, or this misunderstanding, or this issue that was lingering in the background, or just a desire to want things to go better, and you're not sure how to do it, or it's an important relationship you want to get on track. I mean, there's so many situations where all of this applies. And of course, it applies within our coalition as well. But what we always want to do is move from contrast toward alignment. And that's just key. Key to really being effective at the activity of communication is just understanding that contrast is natural. We can't avoid contrast. It's the natural byproduct of all of this. I mean, this is all opportunity for contrast to occur. So what a really effective communicator realizes is that contrast is just a starting place. It's not an ending place. And I know for me, I get bent out of shape a lot too when I think things are a certain way, and then my communication doesn't come out right because I'm thinking that someone's not being a good actor or something's not going well. And instead, if we just relax and say, you know, we're always going to be able to make progress toward alignment. We won't necessarily get to perfection, but we're going to be able to if we follow the steps that I'll eventually get to. All right. So this idea of contrast and alignment is very important, because if we experience contrast, it puts us in a negative emotional state. versus alignment creates positive emotional states. That's what emotions are. Emotions are basically your reaction to your experiences. And then they happen on a spectrum of negative to positive based on the degree to which you feel the experience contrasted with you or aligned with you, what you wanted, where you were hoping to go, etc. Um, and our emotional state leads to our engagement, how people engage with one another. So a positive emotional state would likely lead to better engagements, whereas negative emotional states lead to more challenging engagements. And our level of engagement leads to our velocity, which to me is output, productivity. And something I'd love to talk about, if any of you can help me remember, is I would like to talk about the fact that as a coalition and beyond, we have something called an action economy. It's a concept that I'm playing with economy. Okay. I'm writing with the mouse, by the way. So an action economy. And what that means is as a coalition, we represent a set of possible actions we can take as individuals, as a group, our networks and beyond. And if we can marshal these actions and put them into the right places, actions are what create outcomes. And that's kind of another way of thinking of velocity. All right, and then that leads to our rapport. I mean, how we make progress will determine how we feel about each other and what we're doing. So this alignment meter is really important, and communication has a lot to do with it. And we can move from contrast toward alignment. We can preempt a lot of contrast, by the way, too, if we follow the principles. All right, here it is. This is the model. This is what I call communication for alignment. It's not a traditional communication model. It's basically four principles, but they happen in a certain sequence. So I want to talk to you about each one and the sequence and all of that. But the idea is think about a situation that, let's call it an alignment conversation that needs to happen. And maybe it's something on your mind. Just as an exercise, we could talk through your example in your mind and, I'll talk through the content and you apply it. But the first thing is advocate reality. I know it seems weird. And just remember, a lot of my concepts are about BIBNO, basic, but not obvious. I'm not going for advanced things you haven't heard of before. I'm kind of going, back old school. And you're like, whoa, okay, yeah, that's right. I can't argue with that. And that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to get back to the very basics. And if we root our communication in reality, it provides so many advantages. I'll come to that. I'll talk about it. But essentially, think of your situation and just go, hey, what happened? What is the sequence of events? What are the key points? Try to state it objectively as possible, as if you're a reporter. You're just telling the story, reporting the facts. Here's where we are. Here's why it matters. Because it wouldn't be on your mind if it didn't matter. So name it, describe why it matters. Our relationship matters. How we work together matters. This work is important, and this is why it matters. Really get clear on it. And then in light of what happened and in light of why it matters, there's a reality that we need to talk about. And here's what I see it as being, but I also want to hear how you see it. That's just a potential way of starting it. And then we'll go through what is it, what do each of these look like? All right. So while I'm already here, let's talk about advocating reality. I want to describe a model. There's something else called the ladder of inference, and I've just played with my own version of it. And basically, the idea is that we all start from this thing called reality. It's this large pool. It encompasses everything that is the universe, and it is reality, and that's the world. And there's a fraction of it that's known to us, probably a very small fraction. And then there's a portion of the pool of reality that's unknown to us. Now, here I have it as like a 50-50 split, and that's not even anywhere near the case. I mean, if you really think about what fraction of reality you currently possess in your knowledge base right now, I mean, it could be a little disturbing. I mean, what's going on in the room next to you, or the building next to you, or in the state next to you, or in the country next to you, and what was going on yesterday in those places, and before that, and before that. And each of these, I mean, like each of these are realities, aspects of reality, and we don't know all those things. We're not omniscient. We're not all knowing. So we only get a fraction of reality, and that's what we perceive. And this is the portal of our senses, our sense of sight, sound, touch, taste, etc. We take the world in through these portals, and they're all linked to our nervous system, which is going to be really important because the next principle is talking about neurology. Communication's a neurological event. So is perception. And so much of what happens in the way we interact is all rooted in our nervous system. And we don't really talk about it like that. It's a weird way to talk about it, actually. Not for me, I'm used to it, but when I talk about it this way, it's a little unusual. What do you mean nervous system? You know, and if you think about it, it'll make more sense. So we have perceptions. We only get a fraction of reality that we perceive. And then from there, we have to like make meaning out of it, fill in the missing data. And then based on that, we have to judge it. Is it good for us or is it bad for us? And what we're really looking at is it good for our survival and our thriving? You know, to kind of do a callback to some other things, the model in you might remember, I call it BEST, the beginning and ending of everything. And then there's really two states, survival and thriving. And that's what we're assessing, is that's what our alignment meter is telling us. Is it aligned with my survival and thriving and well-being, or my version of it, or my imagined idea of it, or does it contrast with it, right? And this is what's happening as we go up this ladder. And then what we do is we look for things that validate our assessment, our position or stance. We validate it, we dig in, we fortify, and then we behave. And this is all a function of TFBs. And what's really, and this is just one person, but now we can look at it with two people. And they look at different sections of reality. They segment reality differently. They perceive it differently. I didn't see what you saw, or I didn't make meaning out of it the way you made meaning out of it. My experience and personality is different from your personality and experiences. So we make different inferences and different judgments, and we validate differently. And then we think about different actions or going in different ways. And then how does this work for our relationships, the projects we work on, our coalitions, our households? So what we're really trying to do is really bring it back down to this pool of reality. All right, this video is going way longer. All right, so basically let me say a few more things about the first principle, advocate reality. So it's about basing our communication on objective, verifiable facts and truths. So to the degree we can do it ourselves, we model it for the other person, we encourage them to do the same. We can prep ahead of time, allows us to do these things. When we manage our neurology, the next step, it allows us to do this better. We want to make sure all parties acknowledge and address the real situation, that we're not talking around the elephants on the table. You know, I actually have a book, on communication book called, you know, something like The Elephants in the Room. And it's just about that whole idea of how we're just able to just not talk about the real thing we need to. And just being able to be an agent of reality means you're going to increase the value of people around you. It's really important to my view of organizational development and intervention and so forth, is being an advocate of reality. I also, the way I say it, I might have even accidentally said it a few times, I call it being an agent of reality. That's how I really think of it in my head, is like, I'm like an agent, you know, and I represent reality, and my job is to be as in line with it as I can. There's a lot of advantages to it. It keeps you grounded. It prevents mistakes and regrets. It's actually the best debate partner. Me and reality against any two. That's what I say when it comes to debate. It's hard to debate against reality. People do it. Some people even succeed and get elected president. Never mind. But people can distort reality. But for me, and in my communication studies, my interest was in persuasion resistance. That's kind of my bias in terms of communication. Everybody else studied how to be better influencers. I was studying how do you protect yourself against them? And so a lot of my views of communication come from that. And then just some thoughts. I mean, you could read through these. I can't go through one by one time-wise, but we could talk about any of them. But this is the first aspect of communication for alignment. It's about advocating reality. That's not what I meant to do. It's about advocating reality. That's really the beginning. But next, and even simultaneously, you could kind of think of these four principles maybe happening simultaneously or overlapping, but it's managing neurology. So I want to say a few things about that. It communication's a neurological event. When somebody communicates, it tells me a lot about what is in their nervous system. Even if they're trying to hide, deceptive communication even can tell you what's in someone's nervous system. So in our view, we view communication as a neurological event. And what that means is it emphasizes communication. It recognizes how deeply entwined it is with our nervous and neurological processes, our TFBs. That communication isn't just some abstract thing, that it is part of our design and our functioning. Okay, so I would love to go into this more. This is Daniel Goleman's. I didn't cite it here. Goleman, he's kind of considered the main person with emotional intelligence. And I just drew his model this way. It's not represented this way usually, but these are the 4 aspects of emotional intelligence. It starts with self-awareness. Self-awareness leads to 2 things. It leads to self-management. The more aware I am, the better I can manage myself. The more aware of my thoughts, the better I can manage them. The more aware of my feelings, the better I can manage them. The more aware of my behaviors, the better I can manage them. But self-awareness also unlocks social awareness. What that means is the more aware of myself I am, the more I'm able to be aware of others around me, the more I can empathize. Well, if this made me feel weird, it probably is making them feel weird. If I'm upset about it, they're probably upset about it. You know, if my StrengthsFinder themes are affecting how I'm perceiving it, then their StrengthsFinder themes, even though their themes are different, could be affecting it as well. It's going way longer than I thought. But y'all, you can pause this at any time. It is a flipped classroom. You don't even have to watch the rest. I've only asked you for 15 minutes, but I hope you're getting something from it. Self-management plus social awareness combine to lead to better social management, which means relationships. And that's what we want. The better I can manage myself and the better I can be aware of other people, the better I can manage the relationship. And that's the beauty of emotional intelligence. So in getting better at all of these is also about managing our neurology. Fewer misunderstandings, better decisions and less impulsive decisions, increased empathy, better resolution of conflicts, or even preemption. That's what I'm into. I call it defusing the drama bomb. I actually had dramabomb.com, and I don't know how I lost it, and I don't know how somebody else has it, but I call it defusing the drama bomb because conflict is too late. You know, we have to do a lot of work and put a lot of resource once conflict is there. But if we can align earlier, that's what it's about. And that's leading me to the next point, actually. But I also want to put in a huge plug for mindfulness and its role in managing neurology. Yes, okay. So that was number 2. That was the second principle, manage neurology. Third is assess alignability. And I want to draw this on this model here. Let's see if I have a larger version somewhere. This model comes from authors Connolly and Ryanishek. And I don't think I have a citation here. Mickey Connolly and Richard Ryanishek, they wrote a book called The Communication Catalyst. And so this is their model. I really like it. It's basically saying, hey, this is me. This gold arrow here is my view. It's my perception, my ambition, where I'm heading and what I'm doing. My subjectivity is really what it is. And that's a huge issue I could get into. And that's really at the heart of communication problems. Can't even write it. That's how much of a problem subjectivity is. And then you are over here and you have your view and your subjectivity and your longer arm than the other, your perceptions, your values, your wants, your filters of personality, StrengthsFinder, Myers-Briggs, and so forth. And then there's the third arrow, which is reality, which is kind of going back to the first principle of advocating reality. But you have to account for it. It doesn't matter so much what you and I want. If we even reach agreement, what if reality says otherwise? So we got to take into account the facts. So that's why, you know, the step 1 feeds into here we are, step 3. So what we're looking for is the intersection of those 3. That's what alignment looks like. How can I incorporate your view, appreciate your view, be enhanced by your view, not threatened by it? and encourage you to do the same by managing your neurology, by modeling for you acceptance and modeling partnership, which is something April models for me very well. And then encouraging you to do the same. All right, so that's a little bit about let's see, assessing alignability. I want to know, can we get into alignment? Is the step 3. I want to assess it. So steps 1 and 2 lead to step 3. The better I can advocate reality and be an agent of reality, and the better I can manage neurology, yours and mine, the better I can now assess, can we get into alignment? And yeah, and so you can read these concepts here. I mean, it's pretty straightforward here. You could pause here and just see what we're talking about in terms of assessing it. I want to know, can we get into alignment? Because if we can't, then that's helpful for me to know too. That's going to help me determine next steps, which is positive action. And sometimes positive action might be to say, you know what? We can't get into alignment. We should discontinue this conversation. And that may not feel positive, but it may be positive because maybe the contrast was just there wasn't alignability. But usually there is. And if we do steps 1 and 2 and 3 right, then by the time we get here, we're going to know what's going to move us closer toward alignment. Again, maybe not all the way to perfect alignment, but it can move us in the right direction. And that's what this is about, communication for alignment. So you can read a little bit about what we mean by taking positive action, and how each of the previous steps or principles really feed into this last and final one. So basically, friends, I think that's a gracious plenty of content for us to discuss for next time. Thanks for watching. Hope this is useful. Bring your ideas. We'll talk about it in our next session. Have a wonderful holiday time, and we shall talk soon. Thank you.